through the decades. What are you going to remember from this decade? The music? The style? Kanye's Twitter feud? Let's go back and see what the other decade remember. In the 1960s, politics, music, and society changed around the world. The Vietnam War is still going on and JFK and Dr. King are assassinated. TV is dominating the decade and hippies are everywhere. The first man lands on the moon also.
Alright, I have two questions for you. The first one is, what was society like when you were a teenager?
Nothing like it is now.
And what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Society back then was completely different because, well, I really don't want to say, but
Okay.
Society sucks.
Stop.
Oh, don't you?
Yeah.
but they still had bullying back then because I got bullied a lot.
Oh man. Do you need a hug?
No.
Okay. Okay, now the second question is, what was high school like for you? When you were a teenager, of course.
A lot of hard work. But didn't pay.
Next on is the 1970s. Women's rights are blowing up, Nixon resigns, and everyone is anti-war. It's a bad decade for everyone. The good thing is, movies. Jaws, Exorcist, Alien, Rocky, Carrie, Grease, and so many more.
Robert T. Beaumeyers.
Alright, I have a few questions for you.
Sure.
The first question is, what was society like when you were a teenager?
Well, when I grew up, which was, I was born in 1948, it was right after the Second World War, and our families had been reunited after coming back or being in defense of our country here, and so the family structure was one of which, at least initially, things were happy, and people were excited about being reunited with those that had been away. And I lived in a lower middle class home. My father worked at the DuPont Corporation. My mother was a housewife. And very seldom did you have mothers who actually worked. So the father generally had a good job. He could go ahead and make sure that there were means for the entire family, whereas today, of course, many parents are working 2 and 3 jobs and both parents are working. So that's a big difference that we had back then.
Okay, the second question is just, what was your life like as a teenager in high school?
Well, in high school, when I was in junior high, I wasn't a very good kid. And I got in a lot of trouble. And I actually spent probably more time out of the classroom than in the classroom. However, I was fortunate enough, and it wasn't because I was dumb or anything else, it was that I was pretty much bored. I was big into sports at that time, and that was my outlet. So things changed in my home, and there were some difficulties with my parents and their relationship, so they decided with my problems, or whatever I was creating, that they would send me away to a military school, which they did. And it was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me. I needed the structure, I needed the discipline, and of course it was my savior. And so I spent 4 years at a military school, and then graduated, and then went on to college before I went into service.
Awesome. Okay.
Moving on to the 1980s. The 1980s had many names. It was known as the Reagan Revolution, the Age of Blockbuster. The 1980s made the best sitcoms. Bright colors everywhere throughout the 80s. Big hair ruled the world. It's a lot to handle. I'll let them tell you how the 80s was.
Alan.
Okay. So I have two questions for you. The first one is, what was society like when you were a teenager?
What was society like when I was a teenager?
Yes.
I would say much better than today's society because people are too fast. New technologies ruin families.
Okay.
A lot more family time. Weekends was meant for family.
Yeah. All right. The second question is, what was high school like for you when you were growing up?
It was a party.
What do you mean?
When we went to high school, if you were 16 years old in ninth grade, you got to go to the smoke hole because they allowed smoking. We carried guns to school in our vehicles.
All right.
So it wasn't all this crazy shit that you see nowadays. People actually got along a lot better back then than they did now. There's more racism now than there ever was back when I was growing up.
All right, thank you.
Throw it forward to the 90s. DVD was introduced in the first web server. Friends came out, video games were blowing up in arcades, and cartoons were taking over the TV. Well, let's just hear from the people who were actually teens then.
My name is Jessica Salvia.
All right, I'm going to ask you about 2 or 3 questions, and you just answer them honestly.
Okay, great.
First question is, what was society like when you were a teenager?
I mean, it was pretty similar to the way it is now. There was, we didn't have social media. Cell phones were a relatively uncommon thing for a student to have a teenager. Like, I think there was 2 kids in my high school. There were 2 kids in my high school that had cell phones. So, I mean, that was a huge difference. Like, just communication with one another. You had to call each other on the phone or just, find people. I can remember driving around on Friday night just, trying to find people to ask them if they wanted to hang out. So, I mean, that would, for me, I guess, would be the biggest difference. News was consumed with newspapers or on TV, and now we consume almost all of our news and our media through our phones and computers. So, those are the biggest differences.
All right. The second question is, what was your high school experience like for you?
Well, I went to a relatively small rural high school in the middle of West Virginia. My whole family worked there. My mom was a teacher there, her brother, her sister. Yeah. My grandfather was the former athletic director. So it was a little bit different for me because my family had been involved in that school for years, generations. So my high school experience was, I think, a little bit more unique than maybe other folks. I couldn't skip school. I tried once.
Yeah, that probably didn't work out.
My mom tracked me down, and it was not pretty. We were at my friend's house trying to have a party in the middle of the day because it was the 90s. And my mom, just called on the phone. And then my friend answered, and he was like, "It's your mom." She was like, "Get back to school, all of you!"
Name? Mitchell Jones. What was society like for you as a teenager?
Well, there was a lot of gangs and unemployment in the world.
Anything else?
Clinton was president at the time.
Okay. What was life like for you in high school?
Going to school, going to work, and chasing boys.
Alright, thank you.
I'm Mr. Linder.
Alright, I'm going to ask you a few questions. The first question is, what was society like when you were a teenager?
When I was a teenager, wasn't that long ago, I think things in society and in school were a little bit not as techie with technology and stuff like that, because when I was growing up, we didn't have direct access to computers and our phones and stuff like that. So I think that's one big difference from society then to society today, is looking at the growth and the use of technology in life and in the classroom too.
Alright, the second question is, what was your high school experience like? What was it like for you?
In high school, I tried to busy myself as much as I could. I did band, I played tennis, I was in a couple different clubs and organizations.
Very involved.
Trying to be involved as possible. I did National Honor Society. I was in the top 15% of my class, so I tried to stay as busy as much as I could.
Alright, well.
Oh, we're back to where we started, the 2000s. A lot has happened. The bombing of the Twin Towers, our first black president, our now President Trump, Kanye's tweets, and the greatest songs. Some of the coolest and high-tech movies, vines, memes, social media, and smartphones. 2000s are intense. But okay, let's hear what teens now think.
I'm sorry.
Okay, the first question is, what will you remember about the world today?
Very different from previous years. It's hard now.
Like, what's hard about it?
Jobs, you have to have an education to do everything. It's just hard.
Alright, the second question is, like, what is high school like for you?
High school is better than what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like kids bigger than me, but pretty fun, laid back, easy, it's fun.
Are you interested in any sports or anything?
Yes, I played high school football.
Cool.
How many years?
It's my 4th year.
State your name.
I'm Lizzie Coulter.
Alright, I'm just gonna ask you 2 questions and just answer them honestly. Alright, the first question is like what will you remember in society in this world when you're in high school? Like, what will you remember about it?
Probably social media mostly. That's it.
Alright, the second question is what is life like for you as a teenager? Hard?
It's stressful balancing work and social life and schoolwork, but I get it done.
Alright. Whoever wants to go next, you can please state your name.
I'm Cassie Fruity.
Alright, and same questions. The first one is what will you remember about
For the people who can't see it, those are just some cards down the hallway. What will I remember? I don't know. Yeah, probably like social media and just how like everything's technology, revolving around technology.
And then the second question was what is life like for you as a teenager?
I mean, it can be fun, but it's also like a lot of work. Stressful. I don't think it will.
Cried a lot.
Shut up.
And then lastly, you can state your name first.
Ashley. Did you say your last name? Okay, I'm Ashley Esquivel.
Alright, it's just the same questions. What will you remember about high school?
About high school, I remember the school culture, like pep rallies and games. I'll remember the people, like my friends mostly, how it's hard but fun.
And then the second question was what is life like for you as a teenager? Is it hard for you? Is it easy?
Yeah, it is so stressful, like trying to juggle like after school activities and schoolwork and like